So I recently heard a live version of the Jacob Collier Lizzy McAlpine song Never Gonna Be Alone featuring John Mayer. And in this live version, John Mayer takes an awesome, soulful solo. But don't take my word for it. I'll just play a clip right now so you can see a little taste of what we're going to get into. So there's a lot of interesting things that John Mayer does in this solo, and we're going to get into those. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about them, so you're going to want to stick around. So right off the bat, let's start with this first opening phrase. All right, so a couple phrases in here that I want to talk about. So right off the bat, this first idea is a very common blues idea, blues vocabulary. A lot of times from that idea, you'll go from that root and slide into the root. But he's skipping up ahead to the third, bending into that, so it sounds a little bit more interesting. And then from here, playing around with these notes, right? So he's really sort of around the A minor pentatonic in this position, but sometimes going to the F natural, right? So he goes, and that makes sense because the chords going on throughout this song is F major, G major, and A minor. So hitting that F note is important, especially when he's on that F major chord. A lot of times when we're looking at this, we're told to avoid that fourth in our major scale. These three chords, F, G, and A minor, come from the C major scale. One first way to look at this is playing through A minor pentatonic, which he's doing. And then we'll get into what he does later, but also adding in that F when there's an F major chord is super important. So let's continue. John Mayer also uses a lot of these motifs and ideas that he repeats. So he goes, he plays it again to add that repetition and really emphasize those elements. Now, here is where we have one of the main things we talk about a lot with John Mayer. People in various lessons have discussed this, not only with John Mayer, but just blues players in general. And that's this idea of mixing major pentatonic and minor pentatonic. And that's what he does right here. So going from this A minor pentatonic or C major pentatonic, and then going into C minor pentatonic, giving you this bluesier sound. When John Mayer is doing this in this solo, he basically is doing that within two different positions most of the time. So most of the time when he's up here, he's playing an A minor pentatonic, and then when he gets himself down to this position, this eighth position, he's more likely in the C minor pentatonic, and that just fits better for a lot of the blues shapes. So after that, all of these blues notes from the C minor pentatonic. From there, let's check out what he does next. Okay, so a couple more ideas here. So switching again from that C minor pentatonic back into A minor pentatonic. And he does this a lot of times in this solo using this slide. So going from this G to A and then C to D and going back up into that. And so this little spot right here, that's what gets him in between C minor pentatonic box here and this other box for A minor pentatonic. And then this is a really interesting thing he does. He hits the B natural. Another note that we don't get if we just stay between our pentatonics. And this one works really well. It's coming from C major scale. You could think of that major seventh. It sounds really pretty when he hits it. But you could also think about it more like he's playing through some of the changes. So we have F major, and he goes to G major. So that B natural is in the chord for G major, right? And so that's one thing that John Mayer does here that a lot of blues players don't do, is he's actually addressing some of the changes from F to G to A minor and what those notes are, but doing it very selectively with just a couple notes here and there, because if he did it too much, he'd start to sound too much like a jazz player and less like a blues player. So he does it just the right amount. A lot of these little slides back and forth, either from C to D or from G to A. And then even right there at the end of it, he bends up into the B natural. So he's giving a lot of these notes that aren't in the pentatonic, and that's why if you just try to play these pentatonics, A minor and C minor, you still don't sound like John Mayer, in addition to a whole bunch of other reasons. But one of them is because you're not playing a couple of these notes, the F note when it makes sense, and the B note when it also makes sense. The F note over the F major chord, and the B note when it's a G major. So you really have to address those changes when those chords happen. And so right off of that bend, that last one, then he again switches from this A minor pentatonic into the C minor, giving that blues. There's a lot of this contrast between A minor pentatonic, really pretty notes, good note choices, blues ideas, bends and all that C minor pentatonic stuff. And that's what he does here. Let's listen to that. So this next spot, he's coming off that bend to B natural, and then he's bending this F into G. That gives it that bluesier sound because the F natural. Going back into more of a major scale. And then right from this, bending the B flat into C, again going back to the bluesier sound. Playing just straight up blues stuff here. Off of the F and the E flat. Again using this little walk up. But he does a slightly different idea. Instead of going to A, he just jumps right to C. A lot of times blues players will play off of this spot right here. We already saw John Mayer do it once in the solo, but this bending this D up to the third and then playing the G after that. So you have the E and the G, that nice little, right? Okay, so coming off of this riff, he does another one that's really interesting. He reaches up to this A. And then right off of that, he starts playing with this major scale pattern using thirds. So what's he doing here? We're just basically going from D and F, C and E, B and D, A and C, G and B, and then here he breaks the pattern, going to A, and then back up to G to kind of end the idea. Let's listen to the last part of this. So the last part of this, he's again switching between these two ideas. I like this little thing he does right here on this pentatonic. It's the idea of taking one bend from the A minor pentatonic and then going to a bend from the C minor pentatonic that is very close. So it just gives it like an extra level to what he's doing. So the first one is the bending on D. That's as if it's in C major pentatonic or A minor pentatonic. To then make that sound a little bit more emotional, he bends from the E flat, which is as if he's in C minor pentatonic, and that's the... That takes the E flat to F. That's from our C minor pentatonic. And then right here on this last note, this is where the song changes key for a second in the bridge. And he continues with that, using notes from C minor pentatonic that fit within the key change. So it blends really nicely between the key that he's already in and the new key that they're going to. A couple other things I want to point out here. In this live version, It's about 10 beats per minute faster than the original recording, the studio recording. So this one's around 100 BPM instead of around 88 or 90 on the studio recording. And that makes a difference in the feel. The other thing that's really important, in the live version, they simplified some of the groove and the time feel. And this might have been for a bunch of different reasons, but essentially we have 4 beats of F, 2 beats of G, and 2 beats of A minor. Whereas in the studio recording, a lot of times you get an anticipation of the G chord. So you have F for 3 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 2. So it has more of a odd placement, odd feel to the time feel. Makes it a little bit simpler to play, although the speed of it changes some of the feel. So a few of the key concepts I want to emphasize here, ideas that you want to think about and practice that aren't specific licks. The first one is obviously this idea of changing between a major pentatonic and a minor pentatonic here. So C major pentatonic and C minor pentatonic. This is a great solo with examples of that. So you're going to want to try those ideas out on your own. The next one is this idea of having some pet licks or your own vocabulary. One example of this from John Mayer is this little area. Just this little spot for this key where he likes working a bunch of different ideas. So you want to think about this not like a specific lick that you're playing the exact lick, but it's a group of notes that he's playing with, has played a million times. Where he can come up with different ideas just using that same space, that same shape even. And then the third one I want to emphasize is the way that he's actually playing this solo over the course of the whole solo, thinking in these 2 positions and how they play off of each other, giving that contrast. So in your own solos on a song like this that has, you know, a repetitive loop of chords, you can identify 2 of those positions, say for your 2 different minor pentatonics, where you're going to go between them and trade off, spend some time in one and then go to the other and then come back to the other, so that your solo doesn't feel like it's stuck in a single place, single key, and there's that movement from one to the other playing off of each other. John Mayer does this expertly, obviously, but this is a good example of him physically changing those positions. Sometimes it's harder to tell because he's doing that within the same position. This one really identifies clearly how he's thinking through that. So let's just play through the solo and I'll give you context of the whole thing. Alright guys, if you want to learn more about the major and minor pentatonics, definitely check out this lesson here. This is a more jazz blues context, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson. Hit that like button, comment below, I want to hear what you guys have to say, and hit subscribe if you guys want to see more from me. See you in the next one.